Welcome, folks, to the last bastion of common sense in a nation drowning in nonsense. This is Reasoned Live with me, Darren Grimes, and, well, blimey, what a week it's been. We've got some lad with a Kalashnikov inked across his face, waltzing into Britain like it's a local pub. Not only that, but he's living his best life. He's knocking out TikTok vids, threatening MPs like it's some sort of fun hobby. Honestly, if a Kalashnikov tattoo on your face doesn't set off a few alarm bells at border farce, that is, then I wonder what will. This Labour government is about as useful as a chocolate teapot. They don't seem to have a clue. And speaking of clueless, Downing Street wants us all to believe that they're really committed to ending asylum hotels. Oh yeah, totally committed. Unless, of course, they fancy reopening a few that the Conservatives had supposedly shut down. It's like closing the door on the chaos only to pop it open again when no one's looking and hoping that we all don't notice. And as for Labour, our so-called beloved champions of the taxpayer, remember that one? Well, they promised to stop housing migrants in these hotels on our hard-earned dosh. Now, though, they're apparently planning on filling even more rooms like the world's worst bloody B&B hosts. I mean, if these lot can't even run a train service without handing over massive trade union fat cat pay rises, how can they possibly manage this circus? We changed the clown, but the show, it ain't gone anywhere. And what about Sir Keir Starmer? Well, the man's so useless that even he can't imagine the British public ever letting him near number 10. Did you see him calling Rishi Sunak Prime Minister again?
By providing multi-year funding settlements. But ultimately, we have to grow our economy, and I'm surprised the Prime Minister didn't welcome the £63 billion of investment that we were able to announce on Monday.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
You couldn't script this level of embarrassment. It's like he's already admitted defeat. Meanwhile, we've got some posh NGO with more money than sense asking us to donate our coats to refugees. In France. I mean, I know Macron's a bit of a numpty, but come on. So I say to Care for Calais, they're called. I'm sorry, but I'm hanging on to my coat and I'm going to give it to a British pensioner. Thank you very much. They're going to need it all the more this year after 2 tier-free gear no cheer Starmer stripped away their winter fuel payments. All while his old makes energy bills climb faster than Sir Keir Starmer's arm up Lord Ali's leg. I know, remember when Nigel Farage and yours truly were accused of stirring up the far-right riots, their words, not mine, that followed, of course, after the Southport massacre of young girls. Well, it turns out, according to Sly News, the whole thing was whipped up by foreign agitators. Yep. Not the far right, that elusive bogeyman that they like to warn us about here in Britain, but outside agitators. So I ask you, what happened to the sinister UK far right that was supposedly marching through our streets? Well, spoiler alert, it never existed.
More brilliant work by you and the team, this time looking online about who was responsible for stirring up hatred with the riots in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. We want to take a deep dive and look at especially Telegram, the messaging app where a lot of these riots were sort of talked about and organised. But I think what we were really surprised by is how many of these were not from the UK. So we looked at more than sort of 10,000 groups, went through all these messages, and it turns out the majority of these were not coming from the UK. They were abroad, effectively what you might call foreign interference.
It's absolutely laughable. What a time to be alive. Right, let's see who we've got in Grimes's Grotto tonight, eh? First up, we're going to actually get up the Grimes's Grotto, and then after that, to dissect all of this madness, we've got the man himself, the Reform MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson. He's going to be giving both barrels to the Conservative Party and their leadership election and telling you what he thinks of the race, and actually discussing the English manager, well, England's manager, he ain't English, he's German, and also the fact that in Nottingham, they're getting rid of Robin Hood from one of their oldest banks. Why is this happening? Is this an attack on our history and heritage? Well, stay tuned for that. Right. Well, I am actually going to go straight to Lee Anderson, I believe, so I can get the good man himself off to the boozer. And Lee joins me now for this. Lee, my friend, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Darren. And don't cast aspersions on my good character. I don't indulge in boozers or heavy drinking or anything like that.
I do apologise. I do apologise. Look at that. Look at that. Straight on the plonk. Hey, that looks quite fancy, that, Lee. What was that?
I don't know. It says more de cal. I mean, I am fluent in French, but I've no idea what that means.
Right, Lee, I want to start then by asking you about this first of all. So, Nigel, our good friend, tweeted this, where he said that why can't we have an English manager? This comes after Thomas Tuchel was made manager, and he is a German. And Tuchel has 18 months, apparently, according to the Mail, to prove that he's up for the job. Now, does it bother you, Lee, that, there's the United Kingdom, England especially, the Premier League is the best league in the world, right? Surely we've got some English talent somewhere that we could have chosen, right?
Well, you'd hope so, Darren. I mean, you look at the Premiership and you look at all the best managers in the Premiership, and they're probably not from England. I look at my own team, Nottingham Forest. You look at Man City. You look at the top teams. They've all got foreign managers. I'm a little bit mixed on this. I think that if you cannot get an English or a British manager good enough to manage the England side, then there's something wrong within our country. But I will say this, Darren. If this new manager stops the England players taking the knee, then he's got my support.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I was going to say, actually, the best league in the world when they're not on their knees. And, all that ridiculous woke nonsense that's been going on. But on the point of there being a wider assault league, do you think this all plays into perhaps, Britain isn't as confident as it used to be in itself, and that actually we need to be a bit more proud and loud about who we are and what we've given to the world and all the rest of it?
Yeah, I mean, look at the FA. Traditionally, over the years, they've always been weak and pathetic, Darren. You know this. I go back to the 1970s when a long time before you was around, young man. And I look at the team I follow is Nottingham Forest. We had a manager called Brian Clough. He should have been the manager of the England side back in the 1970s. But the FA, they are weak. They are pathetic. They overlooked him. They employed another man. I think it was Ron Greenwood at the time, a yes man. They're doing more of the same now. And even Gareth Southgate, even though he's quite successful getting us to different finals and semi-finals, I still think he was woke, he was weak, he was, not what we really wanted. This is the best. I'm a big football fan, Darren, and this is the best crop of players I've seen in my lifetime. And if we can't win something with these players, then there's something wrong.
Well, they were all saying they wanted Eddie Howley, and I said, get your greedy little mitts off one day, but not right now. Not right now. He's doing sterling work at Newcastle, which is my club. Right. Lee, I want to ask you about this before we get on to the real topic of the night that people are desperate to know your views on, which is the fact that Nottingham Building Society have rebranded themselves. They've ditched Robin Hood. That's the Building Society, also known as the Nottingham. They changed their logo and the branding from the image of Robin Hood to a stylised N. Now, Lee, if you ask me, that looks like a dodgy squiggle. I don't think that looks like anything worth shouting about. But this is all part of the same thing, is it not? Where we're just getting rid of things that we see from our history. That you go back to the 14th century, I believe, and the yeoman Robin Hood can be found all the way back then, right? He's one of our fables that's been part of the furniture, the national furniture, for a very long time. Is this not shunning what is part of our history and rich tradition?
Well, where I live, Darren, in Nottinghamshire, North Nottinghamshire, Sherwood Forest runs through my constituency, and we're incredibly proud of the myth, the legend, the man, Robin Hood, and this is more woke nonsense. I mean, this squiggle, what you just mentioned, I've no idea what that means, and probably nobody else does. But look, this is, again, some idiots. They must lie awake each night, Darren, thinking of ridiculous things to say, and come out with the following day. Leave him alone. He's part of our history, our heritage, our culture. He's a hero. Is a character that we cling on to sometimes to see the good in people. And look, we have had turbulent times in the past in this country, but for our neck of the woods, Robin Hood is a real hero, and we should make more of it, not turn our back on him. And these, like I say, Dan, these idiots that lie awake at night think of this nonsense. Really, they need to shut up and just go somewhere else. Probably lie down in a dark room and switch some whale music on. That'll probably sort them.
But do you think this is all part of a wider ESG trend, though, where it's a part of you've got to be diverse and inclusive, and that actually there might be people that have not too recently arrived into Britain, not too long ago, that is, and actually they wouldn't recognise Robin Hood, and therefore they're doing it to try and be more quote unquote inclusive, but as a consequence it's exclusive to your constituents.
Well, look, I mean, if you come to this country, you should embrace our history, our heritage, our culture, our way of life, our laws, the way we live. Robin Hood is a big part of that. I mean, you look around the world, everybody knows who Robin Hood is, Darren. When you go to foreign parts, and I've travelled, around the world, when you say where you're from, Nottingham, they immediately say Robin Hood. That's the first thing
Sherwood
they say.
Forest,
I don't know what to say when you tell them you're from Newcastle. I've no idea, but maybe you could tell me that.
Magpie, that's what they say. But Lee, then come on, we'll get on to the meat of what people actually want to hear your thoughts on. And I was interested in this, Lee, from the Telegraph, and it says, neither Badenoch nor Jenrick can save the Tories, and that's according to Sir John Curtis, who is the UK's foremost polling expert. And he says actually two of the leadership contenders will not, I repeat, not unite the right after, of course, millions abandoned the party alongside you, Lee, for Reform UK. And it shows Kemi Badenoch there with Robert Jenrick sat on the BBC. I wasn't watching the BBC, but I'm sure they were both marvellous as ever. But Lee, the serious question here from this is, which one of them would Reform fear the most?
Well, I want to be honest with you, Darren. I don't fear any of them. Kemi Badenoch is I class both of them as friends. I get on really well with them. I've got a majority nosedive. Well, Rob's did as well. My vote share is bigger than Kemi's. My vote is bigger than Rob's. Here's the problem that Rob's got, and I would have probably backed him, in the final two, even though I've backed Kemi in the past. The problem Rob's got is that he's got these ideas, this ideology. He wants to leave the ECHR. He wants to be tough on migration. He wants to deport illegal migrants. The problem he's got, Darren, is the parliamentary party will not follow him on that. He will struggle to assemble a shadow cabinet that's got his values. That's the problem he's got. I mean, a lot of the membership might follow him, but the actual, the 121 MPs he's got left in Parliament, they will not swallow this. And Kemi, she's, I think she's a strong lady, potentially a good leader. But again, will the country go for Kemi? I don't know. I think she's sort of turned her back on Reform, said some things about Nigel as well over the past few weeks. I think that's a little bit of an insult. Sometimes it could be, thought of as two fingers stuck up to the reformers that left the Conservative Party, voted Reform for the first time. You're supposed to be winning these people back, not insulting their intelligence.
So then what would you say to Robert Jenrick's claim then that he's going to make Reform irrelevant? Do you think that in the next Parliament, if he stands strong, as he keeps saying he will, on the ECHR and things like that, and his MPs don't follow him, is he going to be strong enough to say to his MPs, well, it's my way or the highway?
He's not strong enough. He can't be. He doesn't have the numbers, Darren. I mean, a lot of people like what Rob's got to say, leaving the ECHR, sorting out migration, illegal and legal migration. But the truth of the matter is, Darren, we know this. You look at what's left in Parliament. It's the One Nation lot. It's the Wets. Can he take them on that journey? Yeah. I think not.
Then the Kemi Badenoch point then, where she's saying that actually the silver bullet that Reform talk about quite often, leaving the ECHR, she's saying, look, that ain't a silver bullet, because actually there are a multitude of other things that need to happen, because British judges, who of course we have enshrined in law, the Human Rights Act that Tony Blair put in place to actually put the ECHR on British statute. Well, she's saying that actually British judges would still be activist in their outlook. So, what would be the answer then to that, do you think? Because obviously she's right in saying we need root and branch reform.
I think what we
So
need,
to
Dan, we
speak.
need, yeah, well, yeah, true. We need strong leadership in this country. We've not seen that since Maggie was around. I don't think what we need is, and I asked this in the House a couple of years back now, to declare a national emergency in this country. What's happening in the Channel is abhorrent. It's frightening. We've seen this lunatic who's been making these TikTok videos. We've seen people come over and commit rape and commit murder and attack children, all sorts of nonsense. It's time now. Well, it's long overdue, Dan, to declare a national emergency. Show some strong leadership and stop these boats today. I tell you what, I could stop them tomorrow. I'd just pick them up and take them straight back to France. And we are under international law and maritime law. We're allowed to do that. But Parliament is weak. It's pathetic. It is spineless.
Do you find the Tory party arrogant in assuming that, a change of leader, like a dash of wallpaper, is going to daze their former voters, 4 million of them that voted reform, into thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to go back to the Tories now, and I'm going to forget the fact that I feel utterly betrayed from my 2019 vote and the lack of delivery on the promises and pledges that were made in that 2019 manifesto. Do you find that arrogant in its tone, that assumption, Lee?
I think some of it is arrogance. I think some down is smugness, and I think some of it is they're just delusional. I mean, go to the Red Wall. I mean, you know the area quite well, like I do. That's where I live. That's where I represent. There was, 4 or 5 million people voted for Conservative for the first time in 2019, Darren. They've been let down. They think they've been lied to. They do not trust the Tory party anymore. And it's very, very arrogant to think that those first-time Conservative voters will come back at the drop of the hat. They won't. They've got long memories. They feel, quite disgusted, some of them, people like my parents and my friends and my family, and they're not coming back in a hurry. And they dislike the Labour Party with a passion, and they see reform as an alternative. And that's why we got 4.1 million votes, Darren, at the last election. People are just fed up with the main two parties. They're sick to death of being promised something every election and getting something completely different in the 4 or 5 years that these parties are in power.
One of our viewers, Lee Gilbert, says Jenrick's background is very wet. Can he be trusted? And the question there is, Jenrick was someone that he campaigned to remain in the EU. He was a big proponent of David Cameron's premiership and all these other things. And he's had this sort of Damascene conversion to being Farage light. Some have called him a pound shop Farage. Maybe I wouldn't go that far. But you know what I mean? We're getting into territory here where you're having to second guess whether or not someone can actually do a complete change in that amount of time.
Well, it's funny, Dan, sometimes politicians who are probably not the most trustworthy profession in the land, a bit like journalists and broadcasters, they can change the tune very, very quickly. We live in a murky world. We work in a murky world. And, politics for some people is about power. It's about prestige. It's about the money. It's about getting to the top of this greasy, greasy pole, when sometimes politicians forget what they've said in the past, forget what they've done in the past. The bottom line is, Rob's, he might claim about. By the way, I've got the greatest respect for Rob.
Yeah.
All claim he's been on a journey. Maybe he's seen the light. And, he wants to be prime minister. He wants to leave the party. But a lot of people will see through this. They'll see through this. This claim that is this. Tough on immigration. Wants to deport people. Wants to leave this ECHR. But like I said previously, Dan, early on in this clip, that he has to take the parliamentary party with him. I don't think he can.
Yeah. And then on that point, then, I mean, if you were in the Home Office, maybe we'd all do that, Lee, right? Maybe we'd all start to see the light, because when you're in the Home Office, surely you get to see the extent to which there's been institutional capture of our institutions, and actually the fact that the madmen run the asylum, and women. I'm not discriminatory here, Lee, I promise.
Well, don't discriminate, Dan. You're quite right. There is some lunatics running the asylum. Well, they have taken over the asylum. You've probably seen many, many times, Dan, when I've been sat on the Home Affairs Select Committee before I was ruthlessly booted off by the last government. When I've had the chance to quiz ministers and Home Office officials, absolutely pathetic. It's childlike. It was like, for me sometimes, Darren, interviewing, asking questions to 5-year-old children. They were ill-equipped with the information. They didn't know the brief, and quite frankly, Darren, I don't think they were bothered.
Yeah. I mean, Elizabeth on YouTube, Lee, says the Tories have an overbloated sense of entitlement and treat their electorate with contempt. They don't own us. And I think there's a lot of that sentiment. They're going to have to do some real hard work. But my final question for you, Lee, is from Substack, and it's from Julia on Substack. Hiya, Julia, if you're watching. And Julia says, given what you've just said, Lee, on the fact that Robert Jenrick wouldn't be able to do what he promises to do because there's so many wets in the Conservative Party, wetter than an otter's pocket, you might say, or wetter than a weekend in Newcastle. And Julia says, how many, given that what you've just said, how many right-leaning Tories would want to come to reform? Do you think Suella might be up for it? Because if the Tories ain't going to deliver, we need a political home that is going to do that, don't we?
But it's a fair question, Darren, to be honest. But, we only, 3 months into a parliament. If anybody was thinking, I don't think they would jump this early. They're going to wait to see how the land lies. They're going to wait for the local elections next year. We've got big county council elections in May. I predict now on this channel that Reform UK will make massive gains. The year after, we've got the Welsh and Scottish elections, where they've got PR voting in those countries. So we know in South Wales, we're polling very, very good at the moment.
Yeah.
I think we're polling about 15% in Scotland. So we're going to pick seats up there as well, Dan. We've got the regional mayor elections as well. We're going to pick up some mayoral posts up and down the country. So us politicians are a selfish bunch as well. And some will jump ship if they think they're going to lose their job. And come 2 or 3 years time, the writing will be on the wall, I think, for the main two parties. And a colleague of mine, Rupert Lowe, said to me when they first got elected that we would win the next election. I thought he was mad. But looking at it now, we've got nearly 100,000 members in Reform. Our vote share is climbing every single day. In the Red Wall, our polling is phenomenal. My own personal polling in Ashfield is nearly 50%. I was 43 when I got elected. It's only going one way, Darren. And if these people want a career in politics, and let's remember, a lot of them are more interested in a career in politics and actually doing the right thing. They will jump ship for the wrong reasons, some of them, some for the right reasons.
Yeah, I mean, in Scotland, it's going to be amazing to see because I tell you what, watching Reform politicians go up against Nicky Sturgeon and Humza Useless, I think will make my day, Lee. So I can't wait for that. I know I said that was my final question, but this is my final question. Is Nigel safe, a lot of people are asking, because of this lunatic with a Kalashnikov tattooed across his face?
Yeah. Well, this he is lunatic, and you've seen the first 3 letters of his name. I think it's MAD, mad. He's quite clearly mad, unhinged. We don't know where he is. I mean, personally, I wouldn't be scared of this lunatic, Darren. But it's not that. It's the message he's putting out there. He's got a TikTok following. There's going to be other lunatics trying to emulate this idiot. And, doesn't it say something, Darren, about the times we're living in when this idiot can actually barrack us online? He's taking the mick. Is saying these awful, nasty, vile things. And you know what? It would not surprise me if he landed on these shores and we put him in a hotel and then, let him go through the asylum process. It is absolutely lunatic. I've got my own ideas how we should deal with these creatures. I'm not going to say it on your channel because I'll probably be on the front of The Guardian tomorrow morning.
Well, that's true. But, they're saying today that they're rolling back on their manifesto pledge to actually stop putting them up in hotels, and they're rolling back on that, Lee. So what's next? What's going to be next? We're all screwed. What we need is Reform MPs in Parliament, of course. That'll fix it. And in Downing Street, that would be very nice.
Well, what you need to do then, Dan, is step up to the plate, join the Reform Party, and come and stand at the next election.
Absolutely. All right, Lee, thank you very much. You can catch Lee on GB News on a Friday night. And Lee, we'll see you on this channel very, very soon indeed. Thank you very much, my friend.
Okay, Dan, thank you.
Well, who have we got in the grotto? Not Alex Armstrong, apparently. I've kicked him out. I've left him on the street. Where are you, Alex? There you are.
There we go.
Right,
I'm back.
well, did you hear all of that, guys?
Did indeed.
Good, good, good. I mean,
Yes,
a
it was
tour
very
de
good.
force, a tour de force. Chloe, what did you make of what you heard there? Because you were, I think you're someone, correct me if I'm wrong, that was sort of on the fence about reform in general. Has that changed your mind at all?
Well, I have been a reform convert for quite some time, but I was
Yeah.
maybe one of the later people in the run up to the general election to decide to switch. You know, the argument is we're never going to end up with PR realistically, as much as Nigel Farage and the other Reform MPs may bang on about it and say there's a demand for it. Keir Starmer is absolutely no way going to allow a vote on PR because there's just no incentive for him to do so, right? So for me, and I think a lot of people, they're only willing to switch to Reform if they genuinely can see that it is possible on a first past the post system for them to make waves. And I think, you know, from what we heard from Lee there, he also wasn't convinced that under a PR system that we could possibly win a general election. Absolutely no way. But now the two main parties are performing so badly. I mean, you know, we've seen the polling with Keir Starmer's government just absolutely plummeting faster than anybody expected. I think now we actually see a possibility of them either winning the 2029 general election or getting a very significant number of seats where perhaps they end up in a coalition. Who knows? So it's starting to look feasible now.
Yes. I mean, on that, Alex, the fact of the matter is, I mean, you've been pretty vocal about Rob Jenrick saying all the right things, but did you agree with what Lee had to say there about, well, it don't bloody matter because he ain't going to be able to do any of it in a wet party?
I mean, he's absolutely right about that. You know, the most important thing that can happen to the Tory party is there's an exodus of the Liberal Democrats that currently fill up a vast majority of the Conservative Party, perhaps 50% of them. What will be really interesting is this race between Jenrick and Kemi, because all the wets are now flooding over to Kemi. So it will be telling about what's left of the party membership since the general election. If Rob can snatch victory, that might show there's a willingness from the grassroots to change the party. Lee's spot on. It has to come from the bottom up. But we also need to get rid of CCHQ and start again there. There's a lot of work that Jenrick would need to do in order to have a proper Conservative party, and I completely agree with Lee. But I will say this, and this is why I'm really vocal about Jenrick. I welcome real Conservatives back into the Conservative Party who are vocal about issues that Conservatives have. And I think I would be amiss, I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't vocalise support for someone who's doing that in the Tory party.
Eunice, do you buy it? Because some of the viewers there were sending in questions saying things like, oh, well, Robert Jenrick, you know, he used to be wetter than... They didn't quite couch it in these terms. This is my spin on it. But wetter than an otter's pocket. You know, that actually he was a Cameroon Conservative. He was someone that campaigned alongside David Cameron to stay in the EU, telling us that there would be a DIY recession if we voted leave. Well, none of that happened. 1 million job losses, all these other scare tactics that they unleashed upon the British people. So do you actually buy that Robert Jenrick has had this political conversion?
No, I don't actually. And the more time goes on, the more I support Bednock over Jenrick. I know last week I said
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
No, I mean, in the last week, first of all, I think the Bednock has really stepped up their marketing campaign the last week. I see a lot more videos on her recently. And as you said, I just think Jenrick is another career politician that flip-flops based on, you know, the way the wind is blowing. And I just don't like that kind of personality, you know. But at the end of the day, I think Lee Anderson is correct. I don't think it really matters anymore. No one's really paying attention to the Conservatives like they used to. And as Alex said, 50% of their supporters are Lib Dems anyway. I really think the way forward for this country is for Reform to be able to take over the Conservatives. I don't really see them doing a deal with Reform, unfortunately, because of their ego. They think they're the bigger party. But that will be the downfall of the Conservatives if they don't manage to somehow do a deal or maybe persuade Reform voters moving forward.
Yeah. The other story that Lee touched on, Eunice, was one that you were keen to talk about because you actually said that you disagreed with Nigel Farage on his point of, you know, why can't we have an English manager? I actually think, you know, fair enough to him because the Premier League is the best league in the world. If we can't find any talent within England itself, then surely something's going wrong with grassroots football. They're too busy taking the bloody knee.
Yeah, that argument could be made, but look, we spoke about DEI time and time again on this podcast, and
Yeah.
this is a form of DEI. Why should it matter if it's an English manager? I thought it was all about competence. And Thomas Tuchel, I'm a Chelsea fan, and I remember
Well, he didn't
clearly
do that
when
good a
he,
job at Chelsea.
no, he did, and I think they shouldn't have sacked him because within 6 months of coming in, he managed to win the Champions League, and Chelsea were 10th. They were 10th, and then he managed to finish top 4 and won the Champions League. And then the following year, he was sacked, which I didn't really understand. But I think he's a great manager. He is a little bit fiery on the fiery end, but maybe that's what England need, because I found Gareth Southgate a bit politically correct, as Lee Anderson said, even though he was done relatively well. I just didn't think he had the charisma and the personality to go that extra mile, and I think Tuchel has that.
Yeah. Chloe, does it bother you?
So I know very little about football. I admit I'm a typical
Yeah, but the
woman.
principle,
This is a man's hobby. But I am kind of okay with this. I think that we should, to some degree, prioritize English managers. But I mean, we know with football teams, they end up being made up with people from all sorts of countries. You know, they buy in players from different countries. Now, but what I'll say about this is, this to me is not the typical case of somebody foreign being chosen for a job because they're a DEI hire, right? This guy he's a white man, okay? Let's be honest. If they were looking for a DEI hire because they didn't like the Brits, I don't think he'd be just a typical German white man. So I reckon he was probably chosen for the job on merit.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, our good friend Alex on X says, to be fair, I don't mind the Tuchel appointment as long as he sings the national anthem. I mean, bloody hell, we're setting the bar pretty low here, but it's true. Some of them don't sing the national anthem. The last fella didn't.
Alex took the words right out of my mouth. Well, Alex took the words out of my mouth there. That's exactly what I was going to say. I want an England manager that sings the national anthem, shows some patriotism to the country, because that is a big part of this job, and I won't go back on my word on that one. But more importantly, I want a manager that's going to deliver us a win. You know, I don't really mind as long as they're good. We always talk about DEI and all this stuff. Well, in this case, I'm merit based. I want the best person for the job. I don't care where they're from, but I do want them to show a little bit of love for this country. If you hate Britain and you don't want to sing the national anthem, then please do not be the England manager, even if you are the best person for the job. That's the only two requirements.
Yeah, I mean, it's depressing that we're at this point, to be perfectly honest. But Charlie then says also on X, says, having a foreign manager is insulting. The role is largely symbolic. What does this say about us? Well, actually, I think the manager themselves would argue that they ain't largely symbolic. You know, Tuchel apparently has a bit of a temper, and he's known for putting his players through the mill. And to be honest with you, I want them put through the mill, because I think a lot of them are privileged prats who need to learn that they're there to do a job. They're not there to buy their Louis Vuitton luggage and then roll it out for the photo op. They're there to just score some goals.
Yeah. Just quickly, Alex, Pep Guardiola was the other option. So the other option wasn't English either. He was Spanish. So
well, there was Potter, there was Graham Potter and Eddie Howe, but you can get your mitts off Eddie Howe.
But what I was just going to say is, on Charlie's comment, I think, that what does it say about us? I think it says that the FA are absolutely failing to deliver any talent, despite the hundreds of millions we pour into those organisations. And, what is going on in there? They're like becoming like a civil service style organisation where they're too big to fail, and then they don't feel they have to worry about competition. That's what I think. If I'm taking something away from Charlie's comment there, then we should really be investing in great British talent. We're the country that gave birth to the sport, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Right, who is giving up one of their coats for Calais? Anyone
No.
donating a coat to Calais?
I'll give it to the guy with
the moustache.
I think as you said, Darren, if we should be giving a coat to anyone, it should be a cold pensioner who hasn't got their winter fuel allowance anymore.
I just despair. 100%. I really, really do. I mean, they're in France, right? And also, like, they are not there because they are facing immediate threat, right? It's France's problem as far as I'm concerned. I think that we've got enough problems here at home. I mean, I was looking earlier today, and Albanians within prison have managed to get out video footage of themselves within a prison cell. And they're sat there and they're watching television, they're playing on their video games, obviously using smartphones. And you just think, surely we should be focusing on the people that matter here at home, who don't have that kind of living situation, who aren't getting free shit sent to them. You know, these people get free mobile phones, for example, for turning up to somewhere illegally, entering a country that they don't have the right to get in. I mean, Eunice is currently going through all kinds of bloody hell to try and get into the United States of America for a bit of coverage on the Trump stuff. And the fact of the matter is that it should be that difficult to enter a country, right? If you shouldn't be able to rock up. I mean, Eunice might as well get himself to the southern border and just waltz across.
I made this joke with my friend, actually. I was like, it would be a lot easier for me if I go through the southern border. And yeah, unfortunately, because I'm born in Iran, even though I'm a British citizen, I don't have a dual nationality. Just because of the fact I was born in Iran, I have to apply for a visa. And yeah, I mean, they're doing the right thing. I mean, once I go there, I provide the evidence. They see there's no threat. But that's how it should be. You should be quite selective of the people. Oh, my light has gone off.
Oh,
yeah. I was just going to say, I wonder if Lord Ali could donate some clothing to the people in Calais, seeing as he cares so much about social justice. And
well, yes, I
stopping
realised.
wars and funding the
how
socialists.
many £25 coats would one pair of Keir Starmer's glasses buy? Someone
Interesting,
did maths
hey?
on that,
That's
but a lot of coats. Just on this, I think it's a difficult situation when you see people that are, you know, they're freezing cold, they're not in a good way. You feel like we feel like you need to help them, but we have a very messed up incentive structure in that Britain, you know, we've got them all up in hotels. As we've heard in the news today, they're going to be reopening migrant hotels and filling more places. We've got migrants making this crossing in the first place because we treat them a heck of a lot better here than they are treated in France. But I think if we go a step further than everything we provide already, and these migrants are being given things whilst they're in camps in Calais, saying these are coming from Britain, this is help coming from Britain, that's going to reinforce that notion of Britain is the soft, cushy country where you can all come and be looked after. You know, it's a difficult situation because, you know, for example, you have some countries that the migrants are leaving and moving on elsewhere because they'll have to wait time for their asylum application to be processed, but they aren't being given any accommodation. So they would just have to sleep on the streets if they don't move on into another country where they are accommodated. And you think, oh, it's not very nice to leave them on the streets. But if you give them the hotels and you give them all this cushy stuff, the problem just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
There's no perfect answer. It's a shit situation both ways. You've either got people sleeping on the streets, or you've got people rushing into your country because you provide them hotels. Neither option is perfect, but clearly the cushy option of giving them all hotels, it's just become unsustainable at this point. And giving coats to them is just going to push them over to the channel even more.
Which one of you wanted to speak about Madapasa? I can't remember which one it was now. I've forgotten.
And that was me.
That Chloe, right. Well, speaking of people entering the country illegally, I mean, bloody hell, we've really lucked out with this fucker. Excuse my French, I beg your pardon. And this guy's Madapasa, apparently. Matter who. And he sounds like this. This was his latest video. I posted it earlier. And I dubbed it, by the way. He doesn't actually sound like this. And I don't know who that fella is with a skewer on his hat.
Now, everyone who wants to be famous with Madapasa's name, you can make videos of me. You can talk about me. National Gango Patango all over the freaking world. Madapasa, as I said before, the whole world will talk about Madapasa. It's going to happen. But you need to know who's behind this. It's Taranza Pasa. He wants to get into big trouble, but he doesn't succeed. Madapasa, my bro, soon I will listen in English, I will chill. Freaking Juka Pasa, Madapasa, man. All the people who want to sing my name censor this video
Sing my
for
name.
me.
I mean, this
Take
man
your
is on
mother
another planet.
pasta.
Like that, censor.
Pasta man, you make me
That's
look
good.
sharp, man. National Gangu Batangu. The whole world.
He's off his lips. Mada Bing, Mada Bong. I mean, Chloe, what did you want to say about Mada Bing, Mada Bong? Because, you know, look at this here. He's got this tattoo on his face. He's got this Kalashnikov tattooed on his face. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was a member of Border Farce, I think I would actually be looking at this fella and thinking, not sure you should be welcomed here. Just going to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you see a tattoo of a gun on someone's face, I mean, that is a pretty big red flag. You should be very, very skeptical of this guy. But, you know, I'm sure that border farce, as you call them, will see his video where he explains his tattoo and the meaning of it and how he's actually a great guy and it's got nothing to do with him being violent. You know, I'm sure they'll fall for it. Now, I've been a bit confused because I was seeing that he is now in England and is now in the country, but then Googling the news articles now, it's not completely clear whether he's in the country. Maybe he's about to arrive and he's on his way, or he's here. I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, if and when he gets to this country, I would like, the moment he walks in an asylum processing centre, for them to see that gun on his face, right? They can't say, oh, he hasn't got an ID. You will realise very, very quickly who that is. We've all seen the video. I would like to think he gets deported straight away. If you have put out videos very clearly making a death threat to Nigel Farage, right? It doesn't matter if the Border Force person likes Nigel Farage or not. That person should be deported. That person is not safe to be on the streets of Britain. Okay? He might not get to Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has security. But what is he going to do to other innocent innocent civilians in this country? He said in one of those videos about Nigel Farage saying, I want to come to England because I want to marry your sister. Now, that to me is giving a pretty strong hint that this is someone that might have backwards views on women. He is from Afghanistan, after all, the country that ranks last in the world for its treatment of women and children. This guy needs to be deported straight away, but I know what's going to happen. The Home Office will just wave him through. They'll buy his bullshit and his stories about how he's just, you know, a lost man looking for a new life because he had a hard time in Sweden, and they'll let him walk the streets freely. And Nigel Farage will have to live his life wondering if this guy's lurking around the corner.
Well, you know, you made a good point there, Chloe, though, because, you know, Nigel Farage does have security, and, I you know, thank God he does. But the fact of the matter is, the rest of us don't have security, right? You, as a woman walking around in some part of London, right, you have got to face the risk that this fella, I don't know if this fella, you're right, I don't know if this fella is in the country or if he's just saying he's in England and he's not, or, you know, but the chances are, if he wanted to come here, he could do so quite easily if he just gets himself over the English Channel. So there are security risks for women just like Chloe, not just women. I mean, you could be knifed, killed, shot, whatever else as a bloke, of course. But Alex, the point here about society's number one goal surely is to protect women and children. We can't guarantee we can do that anymore.
No, we haven't been doing that for years now, actually, with the floods of illegal immigrants coming over on boats. I mean, just a couple of days ago, I think it was announced that Starmer's now had, was it 14,000, I think it is, in his only few months of premiership, more so than 7 months of the last stretch of the previous Tory government. It's insane. It's what we're doing is against the first principle of government. The first principle of government is to protect the people that live in that country. We are inviting them. We're inviting these people here. There is no deterrent. We don't know who they are. Many of them have criminal backgrounds. We keep getting breaking story after breaking story of so-called asylum seekers coming here peacefully, looking for a better life, killing people, killing children, committing the most atrocious crimes on our country. And yet we still don't have a political leader in charge of our country who's got the balls to say, we're going to deport them. I don't want these people in our country, Darren. I want them out. I want them out yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Eunice, how do you see this as someone who probably has a more unique perspective on it than any of us do? But How do you actually see what the country is doing right now? Because I tell you what, I think if it were any country in the Middle East and this guy waltzed in saying he was going to make himself at home, that they'd give him very short shrift.
Yeah, exactly. And I made a video about this a few months ago, and I said immigration is not necessarily the problem because, UAE is 80% immigrants, but they're thriving, but they're very smart with their
Yeah, it's the
immigration.
kind,
You
isn't it? It's the kind, yeah.
Yeah, so they go and handpick the people that they want in their country. They bring them into their country. They put them into contracts and into their salaries. And if they are productive after 5 to 10 years, they get UAE citizenship. At the same time, they make it an environment where it's attractive for investors. So you have all the rich people now going to UAE. They have zero tolerance for illegal migration. And as a matter of fact, I think it was the UAE prince that said, we don't take the trash. He just came out and said it. We don't take the trash. And unfortunately, like, imagine that one of our politicians came out and said, we don't take the trash. And they're all like, oh, he's a racist, this and that. At the end of the day, look, when you are in Afghanistan, when you're in some parts of Iran, like when you're in a war-torn country, of course you want to get out. And these people do get out. And I actually have a story about this because I used to live in northwest London and I used to go and, buy pizza at a local store. And then there was this 17-year-old kid that used to work there. And he told me his story. He told me that he actually escaped Afghanistan through the ground, made it all the way to Calais, and it took him like 6 months to get to Calais. And then it took him another few months just to get to the UK. But then as soon as he got here, he got asylum, and also the government was going to give him a flat at 17 years of age. Can you imagine? And that was like, you're going to get a free flat at 17 years of age. You escaped Afghanistan at 16. And the guy, look, I don't judge people, but he wasn't the greatest guy on earth. He was always smoking joints outside the pizza shop. He wasn't like, and you could tell there was a criminal element about him. And I was like, this guy is going to be getting a free flat at 17 years of age. That's insane. And then we can't pay for our pensioners. I just can't, get them.
No, nor can I. Right, Alex, you selected a story out for us for today in which you point out this story. Labour appoint 200 cronies to the civil service. So Starmer is accused of using first 100 days in power to fill Whitehall jobs with his allies. Well, I tell you, before you start, Alex, what I would say to that is quite simple. I've disappeared. What I would say to that, Alex, is quite simple. Hello. Which is this. Why did the Tories not do such things, right? The Labour Party, that no sooner than they've got their feet under the table, they run riot in the way in which they do. They get through all of the left march through the institutions like you wouldn't believe, whilst the Tories sort of take this defensive approach of, oh, well, we can't get rid of what the Labour Party did because this is accepted orthodoxy now, and all these other things, whether it be the Equality Act, which has caused a whole load of problems, whether it be a whole host of things. They don't get their people in positions of power in the same way that the Labour Party do. And that's why, frankly, the Labour Party is so good at getting done the madness that it wants to unleash upon the nation.
Yep, it's a pretty shocking situation. I just want to cast everyone's mind back to the David Cameron era. This is one of his flagship policies at one point in time. I know, sorry, but it was an important policy. The Tories were going to basically scrap massive parts of the civil service, create loads of layoffs, redundancies, and start building it from scratch again, because they realised after all the time that Labour had been in power that essentially the civil service had become the new Labour government. That's what it was. Everyone in there was packed full of Labour supporters, and traditionally speaking, civil service workers tend to be Labour leaning. So they knew they had a problem on their hands. What did they do? They backed down away from that policy because of the pressure coming from top civil servants. It's actually ridiculous. You start to understand the power these people have to influence sitting elected, democratically elected prime ministers of our country. Now, on this particular issue, as you said, Darren, it was shocking to read this because not only has Starmer been packing, it's almost 2 a day or something ridiculous like that. One every 2 days. One every 2 days has been joining the civil service, one of Starmer's comrades. But they're not joining through merit. They're not joining through meritocracy. They are using this loophole, which it baffles me that it even exists. There is a loophole in the civil service recruitment process that allows them to bypass there being any interviews whatsoever. This is pretty much like their policy on the borders. Let anyone in that we want. It is complete and utter cronyism. We did not elect a government to start bypassing the laws and the rules of how our country is governed, and the civil service is critical to that. Absolutely critical. Brexit was frustrated by civil servants. Multiple other critical things in our country are frustrated by the civil service, and I think this speaks to the type of government we have in office. They are cronies up to their eyeballs. They want to hang on to power for as long as possible, even if the ghost of them haunts a reform government or a future Tory government. They still want to be able to call the shots as they did during Brexit. I think everyone should be worried about this. Labour government should hold themselves to the same standards they want the rest of the country to be held to, and have a meritocracy in the civil service, not this cronyism of shoving anyone that you find is your political mate into the civil service of our country that taxpayers then pay for. Disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, Victoria says he doesn't understand that he works for the public, not vice versa.
Quite right.
So yeah, and I'm considering only 20% of the nation actually voted for these bloody people. You know that we often hear that they've got this landslide that would make, I don't know, the politicians of old that used to receive majorities that would make Tony Blair even blush. But he didn't secure that kind of majority, and that was before the franchise was opened up, right? That was when landed gentry was the only one voting.
Well, yeah, exactly. But and you know, one of the things this reminds me of with our civil service is how the Americans do it in the White House. What they do is they clear the White House out when the sitting president is gone.
I agree.
And we need to be doing a similar thing with the cabinet office and top levels of the civil service. They all need to be working for political parties, because the Americans knew this already. That's why they cleared them out. You cannot have your enemies working for you, frustrating your goals. So we really need to get to grips with our civil service. Sue Gray has caused absolute chaos. She's one of the top cronies. She's caused absolute chaos through multiple governments now. She ripped up Boris Johnson's government, and now she's been ripped out of Starmer's government and is still causing chaos in number 10. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Well, it's also naive to assume there is such a thing as a totally impartial civil service, right? That doesn't exist. So given that you accept that reality, then it makes sense that you would then say, well, what we're going to do is get our people in there and get theirs out. I think it makes total sense to have political appointments where you replace the upper echelons, especially of the civil service each time there's a new government. It just,
Absolutely.
The idea of a totally impartial, non-politicised civil service or media even is totally, it's bollocks, right? I'm going to say it's bollocks.
Completely agreed.
Chloe?
Yeah, so I'm actually controversially going to praise Sue Gray after all the Sue Gray bashing. So I went to an event at the Institute for Government probably a couple of years ago now, talking about the problems with the civil service, and Sue Gray was there talking to us. And one of the things that she pointed out, and to me, one of my takeaways was that was one of the biggest problems, is the hiring process in the civil service is so slow, and the care of the applicants is just absolutely ridiculous. So they wait so long after applying to find out if they have an interview. They then, after that, there are a million stages, and you wait a million years between each stage. As a consequence, all the people that are actually talented, they take another job, a job offer that comes to them quicker, right? If they're looking for a job, a private company is going to make them an offer, and probably with more pay, before the civil service comes back to them. So it's a complete and utter talent drain. And what you say about the impartiality, I think you're right. That is very hard to have a civil service that is completely impartial, and that's why you have seen over the past sort of 20 years huge increases in the number of SPADs over that period. And just going back to the point about the hiring process. When the hiring process is so long and so convoluted, and you've got people who have been waiting to hear back about whether they've got a job at the civil service, and then Keir Starmer just waves a bunch through and doesn't make them go through that process. I'm sure that's incredibly frustrating for people who have worked hard and are sitting and waiting for a place. And the length of this process also is the reason why you end up with politicians just appointing spads who aren't part of the civil service, because they can clearly see there's no talent in the civil service recruitment system. So they just decide they're going to get their own talent. There's also a big problem with the ministers themselves not actually being involved in the hiring process. For example, not giving the people running the hiring process the brief about what exactly they want in a candidate for the person who's going to end up working for them. So the civil service will often go through that huge long process of all the interviews to decide who their winning candidate is. And then the minister says, actually, I don't want them, and go and hire my mate instead. After all of that, all the time and money that goes into it, it is a complete and utter mess. And that's not even to mention all the other mess in the civil service with the structure of it and everything. I mean, the whole thing we just need to rip it all up and start again, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But I doubt that's going to happen. I think we're going to waste all our taxpayers' coppers on these hundreds of thousands of civil servants for many years to come, I'm afraid.
Well, yeah. And the whole country needs to be dynamited and then started again. I don't mean literally, before someone I've got the Prevent programme knocking at my door.
Let's just buy an island and start from scratch there.
Well, we could buy an island and all live on it. That would be quite nice. Low taxes, no taxes. Become sort of Dubai.
Hopefully we're not getting there by small boat, Darren. That's the only
that wouldn't be great. Although at least we know Border Force would help us out if we become sort of stuck at sea. And one of our viewers, Victoria, I think she says she wants us to talk about assisted dying. Now, that I haven't briefed anyone to talk about that, and it's a very heavy topic, so maybe we'll do that next week. But it is something that I care very deeply about, and I'm deeply, deeply concerned and worried by the evidence from Canada. I don't think that that's going to end well. And dare I say it, Victoria, I think it was Victoria that asked for this topic. I agree, wait for it, drum roll please, with the Archbishop of Canterbury on this. I do. He was in the Daily Mail this morning and I agreed with what he had to say. I'm concerned by it, but we will discuss it in detail another time, perhaps next week. Maybe I'll do a video on it or something, I don't know. But we did it on the Saturday 5 on GB News, and no doubt we'll be covering it again because it's running its way through Parliament faster than someone can be put in one of those mini gas chambers and then see themselves off. Absolutely awful. Anyway, on to... well, I was going to say lighter topics. It's not lighter. It's more amusing, though. Eunice, what about this, right? Kamala Harris is patronising black men. Last week you had Barack Obama proclaiming that he had to tell the truth, or some truth rather, to America's black community because, you know, black people all think the same, all believe the same things, and all the rest of it. And in a condescending speech to black workers at a Kamala Harris campaign field office in Pittsburgh, the former president said he took time to chastise his brothers for coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses for not enthusiastically rallying behind the hyena that the Democrats have put in as their presidential nominee. Ha ha, hyena Kamala Harris. And in his skepticism, he said that this is due to sexism, not political differences, and a spiteful desire to block the progressive achievement of a first female president. Are you racist for not backing Kamala Harris, Eunice?
No, not at all. And
Are
as
all
you
black
said,
men?
no, but it's just extremely patronizing to go to a group of black men and say, the only reason you're not supporting Kamala Harris is because you're not a real black man and you have to support a black lady. Or if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, you're a sexist, you know? And I think someone was saying that yesterday on Piers Morgan's show that, you know, there's a big problem with sexism and that's why Kamala Harris is not going to win. No, she's not going to win because the last almost 4 years now has been a disaster. The inflation, rampant inflation, she doesn't have a clear plan. Every time she talks, she just gives a word salad. Yeah. And for Obama to come and say, you know, to patronize black men as if all black men think the same. And as I said before, the people that play identity politics are actually the most racist people themselves because you're putting everyone in a group and say, well, you're black, you have to support a black woman. No, not true at all. And finally, I just want to, the reason why they're doing this is because Donald Trump has gained a lot of ground recently with black voters, with Latino voters, and with women. And this really worries Kamala Harris. So now she's trying to, play identity politics, saying, hey, look, I'm a black woman. You have to vote for me because I'm going to be the first female president, the first, black female president. And it's all just political games. No substance to it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I am increasingly more confident that Trump is going to actually do it.
Yeah,
if
I
they
think
let him do it.
He's leading. This is the problem. The thing is, the reason why they're doing this is because now Trump is leading in 5 out of the 7 swing states, or 6 out of the 7 swing states. I think it's only Wisconsin he's not winning. Every single other swing state he is winning, and now they're trying to go back to their old playbook of identity politics.
But she even said that she would put in place debt relief for black people if they start businesses through 1 million loans that are forgivable up to $20,000. Now, you're going to get a lot of people, I imagine, who would take out loans just for the fact that they get a loan that they're completely forgiven for if they make a business. Like, that, to me, is racism 101, that you say, imagine if I posted a post, as she's done, that said that we will give white people debt-free loans to start businesses, white businesses. She would call me a racist straight away. She would tell me that I'm guilty of rampant bigotry.
Well, the thing is, this basically happened in the past, not with businesses, but with houses, with the red lining policies in America, which essentially meant white people are allowed mortgages to buy a home, black people in certain areas are not allowed mortgages. It's basically the same thing. We've just switched the colours round and said white people are not allowed a free loan, but black people are. I think we're going to, I hope that we look back on this in a few years' time or 10 years' time and say that this is absolutely abhorrently racist. I mean, her and David Lammy would have an absolute field day. If she gets into power, I'm sure they'll be having loads of meetings together, loads of
not get them out of
loads
America.
of dinners. And they'll be planning all their reparations to black communities. It is, oh my God, it would be horrendous.
But it says here...
I sent something on the group chat just now, a few minutes ago, about the reparations to the Caribbean. Maybe we can speak about that too.
Like that's what David Lammy wants to do. But the fact of the matter is here, Alex, is that it says one of the points, the last point on this list, is that they will legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for black Americans to succeed in this new industry. That in and of itself, Julie, is very racist, that you are suggesting that all black people are interested in is smoking weed and being baked.
What's fascinating about that, Darren, is that Kamala Harris locked up thousands of young black men for smoking marijuana.
So this is a woke screen, Alex. This is a woke screen.
Yeah, it is a woke screen. It's to say, don't look at my past. I'm all for marijuana now. In fact, all black people smoke marijuana. This is the most racist piece of literature I've seen put out. And you just swap the words for white men, for example, and you can imagine the outrage. Just some bizarre points, like protect cryptocurrency investments for black men so they have their money is safe. What does that mean? How do they protect specific racial groups of people on a currency that can't be detected or tracked by? It doesn't make any sense. So not only is it completely devoid of any intelligent thought at all in this entire thing, it seems to me like somebody wrote up a bunch of policies and just put the word black in them.
No, do you know what I think's happened? I think they've put a load of keywords onto a whiteboard. Ironically, it's white.
Yeah.
Could have been a chalkboard. But they've put marijuana on there. They've put black on there. They've put health on there. They've put cryptocurrency on there. They've put education on there. And they've put loans and business and all those words. And they've said, what can we do with these words? Juxtapose them, put them together, and see what we can come up with. And this is the racist dog shit that they've managed to spew out.
Someone's gone, why don't we just put the word black man in there?
It seems like something out of the thick of it. I can just imagine the scene now.
Like Nicola Murray saying, yes and ho. And
yes and ho.
It just does not make sense.
Let's ban computers.
It's deeply troubling. I mean, I know we're laughing and joking about it, but it is deeply troubling for the reasons that Eunice points out, which is that, this is DEI thinking. This is the American left totally captured by identity-based politics. And that's really dangerous, because once you start to go down, I can think of nothing more racist than the notion that there is such a thing as white privilege, that your immutable characteristics somehow enable you to have advantage in life. I think that in and of itself is a racist notion. But that, with the democratic policy agenda, has been completely accepted as gospel. Accepted, laminated, posted all over. They've got billions and billions coming in from very wealthy vested interests who want to make themselves look all kind and progressive. And it's very, very dangerous. But yet we're the bigots for saying that. This is the position that we find ourselves in. But Eunice, you wanted to touch on that point about slavery and David Lammy's remarks on reparations.
Oh, yeah, this one, yeah. I mean,
Worth the reparations to Caribbean nations. Academics and lawyers have claimed that the reparations bill owed by Britain for its part in the slave trade could be worth anything, hold on to your hats here, from £206 billion to £19 trillion. Yep. If Labour had put paying reparations in their manifesto, would they have won the election? No. We have the highest tax burden in modern history. We're already paying for hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants. We are a hotspot for legal immigration. I think we've paid our dues to the world several times over, don't you? Well, do you want to be part of any more cash giveaways? Nobody alive today is responsible for the wrongs of the past. Britain is, however, responsible for stopping the wrongs of slavery as well. And this is the vital point. It is not about Britain paying reparations. It would mean that current British taxpayers fork out. And why should we? Will we have to go to Scandinavian countries asking for reparations for Viking invasions? No. Barbados is a key ally of China. The Chinese commit genocide against Uyghur Muslims, and it's a hotspot for modern slavery.
All right, we get the hint. Like, obviously, that, to me, Eunice, is speaking common sense. And the fact of the matter is that there would be black people as well in this country who are descendants from slavery themselves, perhaps, who would be forced to pay reparations. That doesn't make sense, does it?
Exactly, but then who pays the reparations? Because as you said, every single one of our ancestors were slaves at some point. And, you know, the first ever slave trade in Egypt was black people enslaving other black people. And who's going to pay my reparations? You know, Saudis, you know, the Arabs conquered Persia 1,400 years ago. Does that mean I'm owed reparations from Saudi Arabia because I'm a Persian? Or as you said, you know, the Romans conquered England and, you know, the Vikings many times, and the Dutch. So are you owed reparations from the Dutch and the Scandinavians and the Romans? It just doesn't make sense. It's just silly. It's just this victimhood mentality. And as you said, you know, history it's not all, you know, roses all the time. Some empires do some good things and some bad things. And yes, was the UK involved in the slave trade? Yes, they were. But guess what they did? They kickstarted international trade. You know, and that was a price they had to pay. And the modern
and we
world,
were the ones that started the end of slavery as well. So
exactly, and the reason
we
why
were the first.
The globalized world we have now is thanks to the British. So instead of looking at the positives of that, we're going to focus on the negatives. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we need to start changing the narrative on this, and more British people need to speak up, and we need to start educating young people about the slave trade, because we're the first nation in hundreds, if not thousands of years, to end that barbaric act of slavery. It's a disgusting thing. And let's not forget there's millions more slaves today than there ever have been. And I'd like the left to finally point to something about that rather than worry about what happened in the past that never affects them to this day. Britain played the most pivotal role in ending the slave trade all over the world. In fact, we spent up to 50% of our GDP. Not only that, we also spent thousands of our lives our British troops in a gunboat policy. We went round the world blockading countries who refused to give up the slave trade. We have done more good to end slavery and to be the first nation with principles on this, to say we participated, we're going to fix it. The great British people boycotted sugar when they saw the famous diagram of the slave boats. They were so disgusted they boycotted sugar in their hundreds of thousands. We have nothing to be sorry for. We should never pay a penny. We have done our job. It's down to the rest of the world to follow suit.
I tell you what, you talk to me about slavery, I would say to these people that there are people like Kamala Harris, there are people like David Lammy. They don't know a thing or two about what those slaves did when they were sending young boys down the pits to mine coal. They weren't black, they were white kids. Right? You can go through history and actually find examples of British people being treated like slaves would have been. And actually, one good point that Satiric Games on YouTube points out is that wasn't the point I wanted. There it is. I'm Jewish. Our slaves are our history. All we have to do is tell these woke morons that they're going to be sending a load of money to Israel, and look what'll happen. They'll all say, forget it. We don't want a penny to go to the Jews, and they'll move on. And we'll all live happily ever after. They are hypocrites in an extreme. They don't know what they're bloody talking about. This is divisive tactics to try and separate us. We've got to ignore it. We've got to well, we don't have to ignore it. We've got to fight it. We've got to reject it. And people like David Lammy, if they get their way, all will be lost, because I tell you what, that is the woke mind virus on steroids. It really, really is. Any final remarks, guys? Because I'm conscious I've had you for over an hour.
Kill the woke mind virus.
When will this Labour government end?
Well, that would be nice. Oh,
when
God,
will
I
it
really
end? Everyone
But
start bidding in the comments.
This is something out. This is like almost a comedy film. We're talking about paying reparations, and then we can't pay for the winter fuel payment. Like this is beyond the joke. Like
that's a very good point.
Being out of a comedy, you know, it's just so I just don't understand.
No, it's their priorities, right? It's the woke left priority. And look, at the end of the day, don't despair, because I can see a lot of despair in your faces, but also the despair in the comment section. Don't despair, because we have been in really dire straits before and we have got through it. I think we will get through this again, because you've got to have hope, you've got to have faith, and we've been here, we will do it again. Different circumstances, I accept. We've never been this stupid, perhaps, but we will get through this. There will come a time when we think, God, wasn't that mad? And I can't wait for that.
The more stupid shit like this that the Labour government comes out with, the more likely we are to get rid of them at the next general election. You know, their polling ratings are absolutely plummeting so much faster than any of us expected. This is completely unprecedented. You know, the more mess ups they make, the more scandals the Labour Party have, the more ridiculous policies that them and their merry little band with Ed Miliband with his ukulele, David Lammy about his Caribbean reparations. The more stupid stuff they do, the more chance we have of getting rid of them at the next election. So, you know, let's make it through the next few years of this absolute bonkers shit show. But hopefully that means that we'll come through at the other side without Keir Starmer in power anymore.
All right, I'm going to just show people where they can follow you on social media. So Alex is at Alex H. Armstrong. Harmstrong, it looks like it says.
Only harming the left.
I actually thought that was Alex's surname.
You thought it was Alex Harmstrong?
I did, yeah.
And Chloe Dobbs is at Dobbs and Policy. Very creative, very creative. Eunice, I've got Eunice on here. Eunice Rocks at Eunice Rocks. Oh,
that's in the middle, by the way. It's 2 S's in the middle, but that's my. I think
it depends what platform. He's got a different number of S's on every different platform. It's
for
quite
God's
confusing.
sake. Well, Eunice, you're going to have to sort that out. But by the way, Eunice, that looks like a Palestine effigy behind you. I've just outed
basically,
you.
I thought like I don't want to hang my coats up there anymore. I need to find like a better setting for me to put my camera. But I was like, why don't I just put like a random painting there?
I quite like that for now.
Yeah,
but you know, Eunice loves Palestine because his new mantra is "Free Palestine from Hamas."
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. What and give them that?
I actually care about the Palestinians. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. Okie dokie, guys. Well, thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed at home watching Lee Anderson. And of course, I nearly said the Saturday 5 there, the reason 3 or 4.
The Wednesday 4.
And the Wednesday 4. I quite like that. Although I think GB News might be on at me for trademark, maybe. Who knows? I've had worse threats. Anyway, all right, guys, have a good night, and we'll see you next week. If I can click the damn button.